It's not just a car, it's a roar that makes the ground tremble, a flash of red that makes the world stop and stare. Ferrari, a name that means speed, power, and perfection. But what if I told you? This empire didn't begin in billion-dollar factories or on glamorous racetracks. It began with a fragile boy in a small Italian town. A boy who almost gave up his life to illness, who grew up in poverty, who had nothing but a dream. This is the untold story of Ferrari, and the man who made the world worship the sound of an engine Ferrari. Just hearing the name makes your pulse race. It's the car of Formula One champions, Hollywood celebrities, and billionaires. Each Ferrari costs hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions. Yet people wait years just to get one. But behind the fame and fortune lies something more powerful: obsession. Because Ferrari was not born out of luxury. It was born out of struggle, out of one man's burning desire to conquer speed itself. To understand how Ferrari became a symbol of ultimate performance, we must go back to the year 1898 in Modena, Italy. The birth of a boy who would one day change motorsport forever, Enzo Anselmo Ferrari. Enzo Ferrari was born on February 20th, 1898, in the quiet town of Modena. His father, Alfredo, owned a small workshop that made metal parts for railroads. It wasn't much, but it gave Enzo his first glimpse into the world of machines. Enzo was not a strong child. He was often sick, often weak. At just 10 years old, his father took him to see a motor race in Bologna. The year was 1908. The sound of engines roared through the streets. Cars thundered past in clouds of dust, faster than anything young Enzo had ever seen. The crowd cheered, and in that moment, something inside him ignited. He didn't just want to watch races. He wanted to live them. He wanted to race. But life was not kind to Enzo. In 1916, tragedy struck. His father Alfredo and older brother Dino both died during the influenza epidemic. Enzo was just 18 years old. Overnight, he became the man of the house. But soon after, World War I engulfed Italy. Enzo joined the army, serving as a mule driver for the Alpine Regiment. Harsh winters, poor conditions, endless danger. He nearly died when he contracted the deadly Spanish flu during the war. For weeks, his survival was uncertain. But Enzo recovered, and when the war ended, he had lost almost everything. His family, his security, his youth. All he had left was his dream. After the war, jobs were scarce. Enzo tried applying at Fiat in Turin, but they rejected him. To survive, he worked odd jobs, even delivering trucks for a small company. But his passion was racing, and in 1919 he got his first chance. Driving a second-hand CMN 1520 car, Enzo entered the Parma Poggio di Berceto hill climb race. The car was slow, unreliable, yet Enzo pushed it with everything he had. He finished fourth in his class. It wasn't victory, but it was a beginning. For Enzo Ferrari, crossing that finish line meant one thing: he belonged in racing. From a small workshop in Modena, to the battlefields of World War I, to the dusty roads of Italy's first races, Enzo Ferrari had endured tragedy, poverty, and rejection. But nothing could extinguish his obsession with speed. The boy who once stood in awe of racing cars was now behind the wheel, and soon the world would know his name. This was only the beginning, because the next chapter would see Enzo step into the world of Alfa Romeo and create a team that would change motorsport forever. This is the story of Ferrari, and it's only just getting started. In 1920, Enzo Ferrari finally got his breakthrough. He was offered a chance to race for Alfa Romeo, one of Italy's most respected car makers. That same year, he entered the legendary Targa Florio. The mountain roads of Sicily were brutal. Sharp turns, deadly cliffs, and endless miles of dust. Enzo pushed his Alfa Romeo to the limit, and against all odds, he finished second. For a young man still proving himself, it was the race that announced his arrival. Enzo Ferrari was no longer a dreamer from Modena. He was now one of Italy's fastest rising drivers. Throughout the 1920s, Enzo raced across Europe, from Mugello to Ravenna, from Milan to Pescara. He wasn't the fastest driver in every race, but he was one of the smartest. Enzo had a gift. He thought like a strategist. While others drove recklessly, he knew how to preserve the car, how to read the race, and how to finish when others failed. But more importantly, Enzo began forming relationships with Italy's best engineers, mechanics, and drivers. While most racers only dreamed of winning trophies, Enzo was dreaming of something bigger. A team that would carry his name. In 1929, with support from wealthy backers in Modena, Enzo founded Scuderia Ferrari. At first, Scuderia Ferrari wasn't building cars. Instead, it managed private Alfa Romeo cars for wealthy gentleman drivers. Enzo supplied the cars, prepared them, and organized the teams. Soon, Scuderia Ferrari became the largest racing team in Italy, with over 40 drivers competing under its banner. It was also during these years that the now famous Prancing Horse logo made its debut. The black horse had been the symbol of Italian war hero Francesco Baracca, a fighter pilot killed in World War I. His mother gave Enzo permission to use the emblem, telling him, "Put my son's horse on your cars. It will bring you good luck." Enzo added a yellow background, the color of Modena, and history was made. The Ferrari symbol was born. Through the early 1930s, Scuderia Ferrari began dominating Italian motorsport. Legendary drivers like Tazio Nuvolari, nicknamed the Flying Mantuan, raced under the Ferrari banner. Nuvolari was fearless, a daredevil who pushed cars beyond their limits. With Ferrari's team behind him, he became almost unstoppable. By 1933, Alfa Romeo officially withdrew from racing, leaving Scuderia Ferrari to act as their works team. Overnight, Enzo Ferrari had gone from being just a driver to the mastermind of Italy's most powerful racing organization. Every victory carried not just the sound of engines, but the pride of a nation. Scuderia Ferrari had become a symbol of Italian courage and ambition. But success came with challenges. By the mid-1930s, German giants Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union arrived in European racing. Backed by massive funding from the Nazi government, their cars were faster, more advanced, and nearly unbeatable. Ferrari's Alfas simply couldn't match their engineering. The gap in resources was overwhelming. Enzo knew something had to change. Managing Alfa Romeos would no longer be enough. If Ferrari wanted to survive in the future, he needed something far bolder. He needed to build his own cars. In less than a decade, Enzo Ferrari had gone from a driver chasing races to the leader of Italy's most famous racing team. He had built Scuderia Ferrari from nothing, a team, a symbol, and a reputation. But the world was changing. As Europe moved closer to war, Enzo was about to face the greatest challenge of his life. The dream of Ferrari would be tested in ways he never imagined. And soon, the first car to carry his own name would be born. By the late 1930s, Scuderia Ferrari was at its peak. Enzo was managing dozens of drivers. Alfa Romeo trusted him completely, and the Prancing Horse had become a national symbol. But in 1937, Alfa Romeo made a decision that changed everything. They decided to bring racing back under their direct control. Scuderia Ferrari was dissolved, and Enzo was made head of Alfa's official racing division in Milan. On the surface, it looked like a promotion, but for Enzo, it was suffocating. He wasn't free anymore. He wasn't building his own dream. He was just working for someone else. By 1939, Enzo had had enough. He left Alfa Romeo. But there was a problem. His contract forbade him from using the Ferrari name in racing for at least 4 years. So he created a new company, Auto Avio Costruzioni. And in a small workshop in Modena, he prepared for the day he could finally build cars with his own name on them. But fate had other plans. In 1939, Europe exploded into war. Italy was drawn into World War II, and like every other industry, car production stopped. Enzo's workshop was forced to make machine tools and aircraft parts for the war effort. In 1943, Allied bombings destroyed Ferrari's Modena factory. Everything Enzo had built was reduced to rubble. But he did not give up. He relocated to Maranello, a small town nearby, and rebuilt his factory from scratch. This move, born out of necessity, would later become destiny, because Maranello would go on to become the permanent home of Ferrari. When the war finally ended in 1945, Europe was devastated. Cities were ruined, economies shattered. But for Enzo Ferrari, it was also a new beginning. He no longer worked for Alfa. He no longer had restrictions on using his name. For the first time in his life, he was free. He had only one goal: build a car worthy of carrying the Ferrari name. In his rebuilt Maranello workshop, engineers worked day and night. Engines were tested, chassis were sketched, designs were refined. And in 1947, after years of hardship and survival, the first true Ferrari car was born, the Ferrari 125S. The 125S was not just a car, it was a statement. It featured a 1.5-litre V12 engine, designed by Gioacchino Colombo, one of Italy's greatest engineers. The choice of a V12 was bold. Most thought it was unnecessary for such a small car. But Enzo knew that a V12 would set Ferrari apart. It wasn't just about speed, it was about identity. On May 11th, 1947, the 125th S entered its first race, the Piacenza circuit. Enzo called it a promising failure. The car retired due to a fuel pump problem. But just 2 weeks later, the 125S roared back at the Rome Grand Prix. This time, it won. The Ferrari name had finally crossed the finish line first. A new legend had been born. The 125th S marked the official beginning of Ferrari as a car manufacturer. For Enzo, it was the fulfillment of a lifetime's dream. He had survived family tragedy, war, poverty, rejection, and destruction. And yet, here he was, with a car carrying his own name, victorious on the racetrack. Ferrari was no longer just a team. Ferrari was now a brand, and soon the world would know that Ferrari wasn't just about winning races. It was about redefining what speed and beauty could mean on 4 wheels. From the ashes of war, Ferrari had risen. The boy from Modena, who once dreamed of racing, had built his own car with his own name and proven it to the world. But this was only the start. The 125S was just the first spark, because the next chapter would see Ferrari step into Formula One and forever claim its place as the king of motorsport. By 1950, Formula One had been born. The world's most prestigious racing championship was about to begin. And of course, Enzo Ferrari could not resist. Ferrari entered F1 in its very first season. On September 3rd, 1950, at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Ferrari cars lined up on the grid. They didn't win that day, but their presence alone signaled a new era. Because Ferrari wasn't just entering a race, Ferrari was entering history. Just 2 years later, Ferrari claimed its first Formula One victory at the 1951 British Grand Prix with driver José Froilán González. Enzo Ferrari later admitted, "When I saw Ferrari defeat Alfa Romeo, I cried like a child. because I had killed my mother. For Enzo, Alfa Romeo was the company that gave him his start. Beating them was victory, but also heartbreak. But Ferrari was unstoppable now. In 1952 and 1953, Alberto Ascari dominated Formula One, giving Ferrari its first world championships. Ascari wasn't just fast, he was untouchable, winning 9 races in a row, a record that stood for decades. Through the 1950s, Ferrari became the team to beat. Their cars were fast, elegant, and brutally effective. But Enzo Ferrari's style of leadership was strict, even ruthless. He demanded total loyalty from his drivers and engineers. To him, Ferrari wasn't just a company, it was a family, and he was the unquestioned father. But being part of Ferrari also meant sacrifice. Enzo was obsessed with winning at all costs, and in those dangerous years of racing, winning often came with tragedy. Drivers like Eugenio Castellotti and Alfonso de Portigo lost their lives behind the wheel of Ferraris. For Enzo, each death was painful, but he never slowed down. To him, the risks of racing were simply the price of glory. The 1960s brought new challenges. British teams like Lotus and BRM introduced lighter, more innovative cars. Ferrari's heavy machines sometimes struggled to keep up. At the same time, internal rivalries and management issues weakened the team. But still, Ferrari found moments of brilliance. Drivers like John Surtees, the only man ever to win world championships on both motorcycles and Formula One cars, brought Ferrari glory in 1964. Yet the decade was turbulent. The team's performance was inconsistent, and behind the scenes, Enzo was preparing for a move that would reshape Ferrari forever, a deal with America's Ford Motor Company, and the rivalry that followed. In the 1970s, Ferrari made its comeback. In 1974, a young Austrian driver named Niki Lauda joined Ferrari. Intelligent, disciplined, and fearless, Lauda quickly became the perfect driver for Ferrari's engineering power. In 1975, Lauda delivered Ferrari's first world championship in over a decade. The red cars were back on top, and Ferrari was once again the pride of Italy. But tragedy struck again. In 1976, at the Nürburgring Grand Prix, Lauda's car crashed and burst into flames. He was trapped inside, his face badly burned, his lungs filled with toxic fumes. Most thought his career was over, but just 42 days later, Lauda returned. With bandages still on his wounds, he raced again for Ferrari. Though he narrowly lost the championship that year, his courage became legend. In 1977, Lauda took revenge, winning another world championship for Ferrari. The Prancing Horse had survived fire, loss, and near death, and still came out victorious. By the end of the 1970s, Ferrari had established itself as the most iconic team in Formula One. From Ascari to Lauda, from triumphs to tragedies, Ferrari had proven one truth. The Prancing Horse was not just a car brand, it was blood, sweat, sacrifice, and glory. But while Ferrari conquered the racetrack, another battlefield was calling. The roads of the world were waiting, and soon Ferrari would bring its racing spirit from Formula One to the streets. By the 1960s, Ferrari was already a legend on the racetrack. But Enzo Ferrari knew one thing: trophies alone couldn't pay the bills. Formula One victories gave Ferrari glory, but selling cars gave Ferrari survival. And so, while Ferrari dominated circuits across Europe, Enzo began building a new empire: road cars, cars that weren't just machines, but works of art, machines that could bring the spirit of the racetrack to the open road. In 1962, Ferrari unveiled what many still call the most beautiful car ever made, the Ferrari 250 GTO. Only 36 were ever built. Each one was handcrafted, designed not only for racing, but also for the wealthiest collectors in the world. With its curving lines, V12 engine, and a soul that roared with passion, the 250 GTO became a masterpiece of Italian design. At the time, it sold for around $18,000. Today, one 250 GTO can sell for more than $50 million. It wasn't just a car anymore. It was a crown jewel. As the 1960s ended, Ferrari wanted to go bigger, faster, more powerful. In 1968, they introduced the Ferrari 365G TB/4, better known as the Daytona. Sleek, aggressive, and futuristic, the Daytona became the ultimate grand tourer of its time. It wasn't just a car for racetracks, it was a car for highways, for the glamorous lifestyle of the rich and famous. Celebrities lined up to own one. For them, the Ferrari badge wasn't just horsepower, it was identity. The 1970s were a turbulent decade. The global oil crisis shook the automotive industry. Sports cars were seen as excessive, fuel-hungry machines. But Ferrari didn't stop. In 1971, they revealed the Ferrari 365 GT4 BB Berlinetta Boxer, the first road-going Ferrari with a mid-mounted flat-12 engine. It was radical, loud, and pure rebellion against the times. Ferrari wasn't following trends. Ferrari was creating them. By the 1980s, Ferrari wasn't just a car, it was pop culture. In 1984, Ferrari launched the Testarossa. With its sharp lines, wide stance, and dramatic side strakes, the Testarossa looked like it came from the future. It became the symbol of wealth, power, and style. From Miami Vice to Hollywood movies, the Testarossa was everywhere. Owning one wasn't just about speed, it was about status. But Ferrari wasn't finished. In 1987, to celebrate its 40th anniversary, Ferrari unveiled the F40, a raw, stripped-down beast. It was the last Ferrari personally approved by Enzo Ferrari before his death in 1988. The F40 wasn't luxurious, it wasn't comfortable. It was pure adrenaline, a twin turbocharged monster that could hit over 200 miles per hour. For many, it remains the ultimate Ferrari, a farewell gift from Enzo himself. By the end of the 1980s, Ferrari had done the impossible. It wasn't just a racing team anymore, it was a luxury empire. From the rare 250 GTO to the futuristic Testarossa, from the glamorous Daytona to the savage F40, Ferrari had conquered both racetrack and street. The Prancing Horse wasn't just about speed, it was about desire, about identity, about the dream of driving something the world could never forget. But as Ferrari became a cultural icon, new battles were waiting, rivalries that would push the company to its limits and shape its future forever. Sometimes rivalries are born on racetracks, but sometimes they are born out of pride. In the early 1960s, Ferruccio Lamborghini, a successful tractor manufacturer, was also a Ferrari customer. He admired the cars, but found them unreliable. He complained directly to Enzo Ferrari. Enzo, proud and fiery, dismissed him with arrogance. He told Lamborghini, "You stick to making tractors. Leave sports cars to me." That insult lit a fire. In 1963, Lamborghini founded his own car company, Automobili Lamborghini, just to prove Enzo wrong. Within a few years, Lamborghini produced the legendary Miura, the world's first true supercar. Suddenly, Ferrari wasn't the only Italian name that meant speed and beauty. Lamborghini had arrived, and the rivalry would shape the supercar world for decades to come. But while Lamborghini challenged Ferrari in Italy, an even greater war was brewing across the Atlantic. In the early 1960s, Henry Ford II, grandson of Henry Ford, wanted to buy Ferrari. A deal was almost signed, but at the last moment, Enzo Ferrari backed out. Why? Because the contract would have given Ford control over Ferrari's racing division. And for Enzo, racing was sacred. Enzo walked away. Henry Ford II was furious. He swore revenge. His mission, defeat Ferrari on the biggest stage in motorsport, the 24 Hours of Le Mans. At that time, Ferrari had dominated Le Mans, winning year after year. Ford decided to build a car specifically to destroy Ferrari. That car would become the legendary Ford GT40. In 1966, the showdown began. Ferrari brought its mighty prototypes. Ford brought its all-new GT40. The two giants clashed on the Circuit de la Sarthe in France. For much of the race, Ferrari held strong. But Ford's engineering power, backed by millions of dollars, proved unstoppable. After 24 hours of brutal racing, Ford didn't just win. They humiliated Ferrari, finishing first, second, and third. For Enzo, it was a devastating defeat. The Prancing Horse had been dethroned at Le Mans. The rivalry didn't end there. Ferrari and Ford clashed at Le Mans for years. Ford ruled from 1966 to 1969. But Ferrari's legacy was far from broken. Because in defeat, Ferrari became stronger. Their Formula One program grew even more focused. Their road cars became more desirable. Their name, more legendary. And as for Lamborghini, their rivalry with Ferrari gave birth to an arms race of beauty, power, and innovation that continues to this day. These rivalries didn't destroy Ferrari. They forged Ferrari. Because true legends aren't made in peace. They are made in war. By the end of the 1960s, Ferrari had been challenged by tractors, betrayed by deals, and beaten at Le Mans. But instead of breaking, Ferrari adapted, evolved, survived. And in the decades to come, Ferrari would not only reclaim its crown, it would rise into something even greater, a billion-dollar empire of speed and luxury. The wars weren't over, but neither was Ferrari. On August 14th, 1988, Italy fell silent. Enzo Ferrari, the man who had built an empire of speed, passed away at the age of 90. The newspapers declared, "The Drake is gone." Drake was Enzo's nickname. Just weeks later, at the Italian Grand Prix in Monza, Ferrari delivered a miracle. Against the dominant McLarens of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, Ferrari scored a stunning 1-2 victory. The crowd erupted. Many believed it was Enzo's final gift. But now, for the first time in history, Ferrari had to face the future without Enzo. The years after Enzo's death were difficult. In Formula One, Ferrari struggled. Their cars were fast, but unreliable. Championships slipped away year after year. Rivals like McLaren and Williams dominated. On the road car side, Ferrari still produced icons like the F355 and the 550 Maranello. But the company lacked direction. The legend was alive, but the fire seemed weaker. The question whispered in garages across Italy: can Ferrari survive without Enzo? The answer would come with one man, Michael Schumacher. In 1996, Ferrari signed German driver Michael Schumacher, already a two-time world champion with Benetton. Schumacher was relentless. He demanded excellence from everyone: engineers, mechanics, pit crews. He brought discipline, innovation, and an obsession with perfection that even Enzo would have admired. At first, Ferrari still struggled, but slowly the red team rose again. And then came the golden years. From 2000 to 2004, Schumacher and Ferrari achieved what no one thought possible: 5 consecutive world championships. Ferrari became unstoppable. Their red cars were symbols of dominance, crossing finish lines with ruthless efficiency. The Prancing Horse wasn't just back. It was stronger than ever. While Schumacher conquered the tracks, Ferrari's road cars were reaching new heights. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Ferrari introduced models that became legends. The F50, built to celebrate Ferrari's 50th anniversary, combining F1 technology with road performance. The 360 Modena, a car that redefined Ferrari design for a new generation. And finally, in 2002, the Enzo Ferrari, named after the founder himself. With a 6.0-litre Phi-12 engine and F1-inspired aerodynamics, it wasn't just a car, it was a tribute. A reminder that Enzo's spirit still lived in every Ferrari. By the early 2000s, Ferrari had achieved the impossible. It had survived the death of its founder. It had faced doubt, struggle, and setbacks. And yet, under Michael Schumacher, Ferrari became the most dominant Formula One team in history. On the roads, Ferrari's cars became dreams that only the richest could touch. Enzo Ferrari was gone. But his vision, his obsession, lived on. And as the world entered a new millennium, Ferrari was not just surviving. Ferrari was untouchable. By the 2010s, Ferrari was no longer just a car company. It was a global symbol of luxury, exclusivity, and power. Every Ferrari wasn't just a machine, it was an investment. Buyers weren't just customers, they were chosen, often placed on waiting lists for years before being allowed to own one. Ferrari had become more than Enzo could have ever imagined. It was now a financial empire. In 2015, Ferrari made history again. The company was listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol RACE. The demand was overwhelming. Ferrari's market value soared into the billions. What had started in a small garage in Modena was now one of the most valuable luxury brands in the world. Investors didn't just see Ferrari as a car maker. They saw it as a religion of speed, beauty, and scarcity. But Ferrari did not stop at money. It kept pushing the limits of technology. In 2013, Ferrari introduced the LaFerrari, a hybrid hypercar combining a screaming V12 engine with electric motors. It wasn't just fast, it was a glimpse into the future. Then came the SF90 Straydale in 2019, Ferrari's first plug-in hybrid, delivering nearly 1,000 horsepower. And in 2022, Ferrari entered a new world. SUVs. The Ferrari Purosangue, the pure blood, proved that even in the age of practicality, Ferrari could rewrite the rules of performance and luxury. On the racetrack, Ferrari remains the beating heart of Formula One. Even when not winning every championship, Ferrari's presence is unmatched. No team has more history. No car gets more cheers. At every Grand Prix, seas of red flags wave for the Prancing Horse. From legends like Schumacher to modern heroes like Sebastian Vettel and Charles Leclerc, Ferrari continues to chase the dream of world titles. For millions of fans, Ferrari is not just a team. It is Formula One itself. Today, Ferrari is more than cars, more than racing, more than luxury. It is culture. It is heritage. It is the dream of perfection on wheels. From the 125S in 1947 to the LaFerrari in 2013, from Enzo's stubborn pride to Schumacher's dominance, from Ford's challenge to Wall Street's billions, Ferrari has survived it all. The Prancing Horse has proven one truth: legends are not born in comfort. They are forged in struggle, in rivalry, in obsession. Ferrari began in a small Italian garage. Today, it is a multi-billion-dollar empire, a brand known in every corner of the world. But at its core, Ferrari remains what Enzo always wanted it to be. Not just a car, not just a machine, but a dream with a heartbeat of 12 cylinders. This is Ferrari, from a boy in Modena to the world's most powerful car brand, a legacy of speed, a symbol of power, a dream that will never die.